Hello everyone, and welcome to this review for creating strong assessments. So you've established your department's learning goal as well as the expectations for student performance, and now you are in the process of creating assessments. In your departments last week, you started developing some new formative assessments and discussing current practices. As you continue to work on these assessments and start to look at your summative assessments as well, you want to make sure that all of your efforts on these formative and summative assessments are going towards strong measures of student achievement. So this video is going to just review some topics that you're probably already familiar with: the reliability, authenticity, and validity, as well as give you some things to reflect on as you develop your assessments for this semester. You'll also get to hear from two more of our in-house experts. Today, it will be Bob Trowbridge and Bill Redman, and they will describe how they employ assessments in their classes. As most of you know, my background is in language teaching, and there are 5 principles that we always consider whenever we're creating language assessments: practicality, authenticity, validity, reliability, and washback. Although these are the 5 principles for language assessment, they certainly are transferable to other content areas. In addition to these, there are many other things to consider when creating your assessments. Today, however, we're going to focus on 3 things that all content areas can and should frequently reflect on, and they are reliability, authenticity, and validity. When we talk about reliability of assessment, we're referring to an assessment's consistency. You want to make sure that your assessment consistently measures what you are trying to assess. One way you can ensure assessment reliability is by asking a colleague to look over one of your tests or quizzes and asking them to look for these things that you see on the screen: avoiding poorly written test items, ambiguity, and more than one correct answer are things that you want to avoid whenever you're trying to create a reliable assessment. Also, making sure that you don't have too many test items. When we consider our students and test taker fatigue, if the kid gets fed up with the assessment, it's no longer a reliable measure of their knowledge on that subject matter. Finally, you want to avoid other distractors. Make sure that your numbering is correct. You want to make sure that the spacing allows for them to read everything easily, and make sure that your instructions are clearly communicated as well. So consistent measures reinforce retention. Bob Trowbridge is now going to describe how he uses reliable measures with a special focus on consistency in his algebra courses.
Well, I've been asked to talk about how I evaluate my students, and I may be the wrong person, and math may be different than most of the other folks here, but we have multiple quizzes, 2 quizzes every week, and the quizzes, the students know that on Wednesday they'll have a quiz over their homework taken from the Thursday night, Monday night, and Tuesday night assignments. The problems are taken almost directly from their assignments. We only spend about the last 10 or 15 minutes on that quiz. We still have a lesson that day, and it's just a chance for me to kind of get a feel that they've done their homework. I tell them unless there's a hurricane, earthquake, flood, or tornado, they will get them back on Thursday, and we learn from them. We have so many quizzes that I try and tell the students the quiz is not really a threatening situation. It's just a chance for them to get a check as to how they're performing. They get them back on Thursday so that we can go over them, learn from them, and then on Friday of each week we have a cumulative quiz. I think you may be seeing a copy of some of the quizzes from the 8th of August, the 4th of September, and the 11th of September, and if you can see them, I don't know if it closes in enough, every quiz has the exact same questions. The first question on every quiz throughout the semester, I've told them, it's in December when we have a snow day. They'll come back on Friday and still have that Friday quiz, and the first question will be to solve an equation. There will still be an inequality that they have to graph. There are no surprises. I tell them it's not unethical for them to ask the kids in the other class what was on the quiz, because they could ask me. I tell them, you know what's on the quiz. Every quiz on Friday is made up of the same material as the week before, with maybe 2 or 3 new problems each week. You could miss a week of school and still take the Friday quiz and get an 80% and not know anything that happened that week. But they know that the material that we cover doesn't go away. We don't do something in September and then say, okay, we've covered that and now it's done. We're going to move on to other materials. So our quizzes are always cumulative, they're always building, and they're always unexpected. No surprises on our quizzes.
Another important piece of creating strong assessments is considering authenticity. How are you making the test and your instruction leading up to it as close to a real-world application as possible? We want to consider this not only with the content of the assessment, but also in the testing situation. Bill Redman has been kind enough to share some of his expertise in developing authentic assessments.
When I'm considering assessing my students' understanding of a concept, if it's a big picture idea, I would probably have them use pencil and paper and write an essay response to that question. On the other hand, if it's a laboratory skill, I feel that's much better assessed in the laboratory. And recently in my class, what we did was to melt some naphthalene and then record its temperature as it turned from a liquid to a solid. And we found that as that change occurred, the temperature remained steady. And so the students plotted that data on a graph, and they could visually see that the temperature remained steady. And then I asked them to explain what was happening and to actually tell how the energy was being used as that change took place. And I feel that that is a much more valid way to assess their understanding and their abilities in the laboratory than to use pencil and paper.
Thanks, Bill, for that segue into valid assessments. Perhaps the most important, at least to me, because I see it as including many other areas of strong assessment, is validity. Here's a quick checklist to consider while you're creating your own assessments or providing feedback to a colleague. You want to make sure that your assessments measure exactly what they propose to measure. Consider the importance, for example, of accommodations we provide to some of our students. If they have some difficulty with reading, they may have trouble solving a word problem in math. Allowing for that child to have the test read to him ensures that we are taking a valid measure of his math ability and not focusing on his reading skill. Another thing we want to keep in mind is that the assessment does not measure irrelevant or contaminating variables. This speaks to what I mentioned before, but something that I have noticed in other schools is there may be something that the teacher requires, like adding enough color to a poster for a class project. This is not something that should be impacting a student's grade for demonstrating their knowledge on a topic or concept, except maybe in art. So make sure that you're not including those contaminating variables in a score that's supposed to measure their knowledge. Finally, and most important, you want to make sure that the assessment offers to you and to the student useful, meaningful information about their ability so that you can provide feedback and also guide your instruction. Now, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed with that when you're thinking about validity. It's important to note that it is a matter of degree, not an all or nothing situation. So no one is requiring that you are completely revamping every assessment that you have ever done. We all need reminders on important things to consider, and so please continue your great discussions with your departments and continue to challenge each other to look for ways to constantly improve and to grow as professionals.